This all happened in October, a month when everything started to get tricky. I'm a high school student and my grades were dropping, and my mom, who worked at a mall, had a hard time paying for my school and our home. And there was another problem. Some kids at my school kept teasing me about my mom's early pregnancy and my dad leaving us. My mom really wanted me to do well in school so I wouldn't have to go through what she did. Doing good in school was like my mission for me, it was must. One Sunday night, I couldn't sleep because of this nightmare. My mom was out late at night trying to find a second job with the hopes of some extra cash would solve our problems. So, I had to cook for myself and stay in our old, spooky house. It always had a scary vibe, cold, dark, creepy, but that night, it felt like the house had a secret to tell. At midnight, I had a nightmare that woke me up, all sweaty and scared. I tried to go back to sleep, but the same scary dream just continued from where it left off when I woke up. This kept happening all night until morning came. The next morning, I made breakfast for me and my tired mom. She had come home after a long night of job hunting. Her tired, sore eyes and hopeless face pushed me to go to school, even though I really didn't want to. I had this weird feeling that something bad would happen with me if I went to school that day, but seeing my mother in that condition broke me emotionally and I just ignored my gut feeling and went to school, though now when I think of it, I should have just stayed at home that day. At school during recess, I was sitting by myself, as usual. Then, these 4 bullies came up to me and told me to follow them. I didn't want to, but I felt like I had to listen to them. They wanted me to meet them by the pool after school, a place I always avoided because it was dark and gave me the creeps. What terrifies me the most was that small window in our locker room that aligned with the lockers. That window never made any sense to me. It was too small for any light or air. After school, I tried to leave quickly, but they caught me. I tried to run away from them, but they hitting me. Their punches and kicks were the rough that I couldn't bear and I passed out. When I woke up, I was in a dark, tiny space. It was pitch black and panicked. Slowly I came back to my senses, and that when I realized that I was inside a locker, completely locked. I couldn't stand up properly. I screamed for help, but it was so quiet in the locker room that it felt like my screams disappeared. Then out of nowhere I felt a strange feeling. Then somewhere in the back of my head I started to remember like it happened to me before. It was in deja vu moment. It all happened in my dream. Then as I began to think of my dream more, I got terrified for what is going to happen. Then I heard a sound of footsteps passing by the lockers, just like in my scary dream. I screamed even louder, but no one came to help. The footsteps slowly faded away, just like in my dream, and then they stopped suddenly. My heart was racing as I looked through the slats in the locker, trying to make sense of everything. I saw a figure standing outside that small window, in a distance near bushes. It was staring at me, just like in my dream. It had no face, just a dark, flat surface where a face should be. It was far away, but it felt really unsettling, just like in my dream. At around 8 p.m., my mom, along with school staff and the police, finally came. They opened the locker, got me out, and took me home. The police and the school principal talked to the parents of the bullies. They got in trouble for what they did. Police and school principal complained to their parents, but the strange mystery still hung in the air. The next morning, I went back to the pool area, looking for any sign of that dark thing from the day before. But there was nothing. It was as if the darkness had never been there, leaving me with more questions than answers. As I'm telling you this, I can't help but feel a little uneasy. The deja vu I felt, the weird connection between my dream and what happened in real life, still gives me the chills. The questions keep swirling around.
It was a month of September in San Francisco, and I was a 20-year-old trying to chase a dream that seemed distant and out of reach. I had left my parents' farmhouse to make my way in the city, with the hope of starting my own small food truck business, selling unique and affordable pizzas. But dreams require more than just hope, they require hard work and sacrifice. With limited funds and no financial support from my parents, I knew I had to find a job to start saving money for my pizza truck. I scoured the city for job opportunities, and after what felt like an eternity, I landed a job at Domino's. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a starting point, and I was grateful for the chance. As weeks passed, I learned to manage my budget meticulously, always setting aside a portion of my earnings to go toward my entrepreneurial dream. Slowly but surely, I was making progress. Life was challenging, but I felt a sense of purpose and determination. But then, an eerie turn of events began to disrupt my life. It was during this time that I started having a recurring nightmare. Each night, as I lay down to sleep, the same terrifying scenario would play out in my dreams. I found myself walking down a dark and desolate road at night. I could almost feel the cold, damp air and hear the distant sounds of the city. But as I continued my journey down that forsaken path, the nightmare would take a sinister turn. Out of nowhere, a massive truck would appear, hurtling toward me with terrifying speed. The nightmarish scene unfolded with gruesome detail, and I was unable to escape its impending horror. The truck would ultimately run me over, and just as it was about to crush me, I would wake up, drenched in cold sweat, at exactly 4 a.m. This nightmare was so vivid and horrifying that it felt like a chilling premonition. For 5 consecutive nights, I experienced this relentless terror, and it took a significant toll on my sleep quality and overall well-being. The fear that gripped me each time I closed my eyes was suffocating. I couldn't shake the sensation that something terrible was about to happen in my life. Then came the turning point, a night that stands out like no other. As I left my job at Domino's, I had an inexplicable gut feeling. A strange intuition pushed me to take a different route on my way home. It was as if a voice in my head urged me to change my usual path, to avoid the road that had become a recurring nightmare. I heeded that inner voice and took an alternative route that night. To my surprise, I made it safely to my apartment without experiencing the horrific nightmare that had tormented me for days. I felt an odd mix of relief and curiosity, but I couldn't dwell on it for long. The need to get a good night's sleep was too pressing. The following morning, as I went about my routine, I noticed something peculiar. My phone was inundated with direct messages from friends and colleagues at Domino's, all expressing concern for my well-being. I was bewildered, and my heart raced as I opened Instagram and discovered a barrage of messages asking if I was okay. My curiosity piqued, I decided to delve deeper and turn to YouTube for answers. To my astonishment, the very first video in my recommended feed was a news report that had been leaked by locals. It detailed a horrific and massive truck accident that had occurred on the same road I had been avoiding. The eerie similarity between the accident in the video and the nightmare I had been experiencing was impossible to ignore. My heart pounded as I watched the news report, my eyes glued to the screen. The accident had happened just hours after I had taken the alternate route, and it was chillingly reminiscent of my recurring dream. The crash was devastating, and I couldn't help but shudder at the uncanny connection I felt to the incident. It was then that the feeling of déjà vu hit me like a ton of bricks. The sensation of having lived this moment before, the nightmare that had plagued my sleep, and the inexplicable urge to change my route all converged into a haunting realization. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had somehow glimpsed the future in my dreams, and it had saved my life. From that day onward, I made a promise to myself, I would never set foot on that cursed road again. The inexplicable connection between my nightmares and the tragic accident had instilled in me a sense of foreboding that I couldn't ignore. As I continued to work at Domino's and save money for my food truck dream, the experience left me with a lingering sense of unease. I couldn't explain the supernatural link between my nightmares and the real-world event, but I was grateful that I had heeded that inner voice and taken a different path that night.